My name is Harold Bennett, and I want to tell you a story that still burns inside me to this very day. Before I start, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and drop your country's name in the comments. I'd be so glad to know from which part of the world you're watching this story. Now, let's begin. I wasn't born into wealth, nor was I the kind of man who ever had things handed to him. Every piece of what I had in life, I worked for with my own two hands. My late wife, Margaret, was my anchor, my guide, and the only person who truly knew the struggles I had endured to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. When she passed away 3 years ago, a piece of me went with her. She left behind not just memories, but also her greatest pride, the house we had built together, the savings we had carefully guarded, and the dream of leaving behind something meaningful for our family. Our daughter, Evelyn, was Margaret's world. From the moment she was born, Margaret poured every ounce of love into her, and for a long time, Evelyn adored us both. She was bright, ambitious, and full of potential. I never imagined a day would come when she would turn her back on me, or worse, treat me like a burden in her life. But love, as I learned too late, can change people, especially when money and greed creep into the picture. After Margaret's passing, Evelyn became distant. She had married a man named Carl, who at first seemed charming and ambitious, but over time his true colors showed. He was reckless, careless with money, and always chasing schemes that promised quick riches but left nothing but debt behind. At first, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just struggling to find his way. Maybe marriage would ground him. But it didn't take long before I realized Carl wasn't just unlucky, he was irresponsible, entitled, and manipulative. It started small. Evelyn would come around less and less, and when she did, it was always about money. Sometimes it was subtle. Dad, you know, Mom always wanted me to be comfortable. She wouldn't have wanted me to struggle. Other times it was blunt. Why are you holding onto all of Mom's money? Don't you think she would have wanted me to have some of it? I always answered with patience. Evelyn, what your mother left behind is safe. It's part of my life now, too, and I have responsibilities. If you need help, I'm here, but don't treat me like a bank. She didn't like that answer, and over time, her patience with me started to thin. Carl, of course, was always in her ear. I could see it. The way his eyes wandered around the house, sizing up the value of the furniture, the land, the little things Margaret and I had collected through the years. He was never subtle about it either. Nice place you got here, Harold. Must be worth a fortune these days. If you ever feel like downsizing, you could make a killing. Just saying. I would force a smile, but deep down, I knew what he was hinting at. It wasn't advice. It was greed talking. Months passed, and the requests became demands. Evelyn wanted money for vacations, for new clothes, for the latest gadgets. At first, I gave her small amounts, telling myself it was what Margaret would have wanted helping our daughter. But each time I gave, she grew colder, more entitled. Gratitude disappeared. All that remained was expectation. One evening, she came by the house unannounced. Carl was with her, as usual, his cologne filling the room before he even stepped through the door. Evelyn didn't even bother with pleasantries. She sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at me with a sharpness in her eyes that I had never seen before. Dad, she began, Carl and I need to talk to you about something serious. Carl leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was about to close a business deal. Yeah, Harold, it's about an opportunity. But first, there's a situation we need to handle. I felt my chest tighten. Opportunities. Situations. I'd heard this song before. Evelyn continued. Carl's been working on a project, and it ran into some issues. Long story short, he owes some money. But it's nothing you need to worry about. Dad, we know you can help us out. It's just $500,000. I froze. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. $500,000. That wasn't just pocket change. That was Margaret's entire savings, the equity of our home, everything we had built over decades. Evelyn's tone wasn't pleading, though. It wasn't the voice of a daughter asking her father for help. It was cold, commanding like she was entitled to it. Dad, you need to pay it. This isn't optional. You're sitting on Mom's money, and frankly, it belongs to me anyway. I'm her daughter. You were just holding it. Her words hit me like a slap. Just holding it. I repeated in my mind. After all the sacrifices, after all the years of breaking my back to make sure she never went hungry, I was now reduced to nothing more than a placeholder for her inheritance. Carl leaned back smugly. Look, Harold, you've got a big house, plenty of assets. Selling this place alone could clear it all. Think about it. You don't really need a place this big anymore, right? And Evelyn deserves to live comfortably. You don't want people to think you're selfish, do you? I sat in silence, my heart pounding. My first instinct was to lash out, to scream at them, to throw them both out of my home. But something inside me told me to stay quiet, to listen, to let them believe they had the upper hand. Evelyn's voice rose, sharp and impatient. Dad, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. You will pay Carl's debt. You will use Mom's money. And you will stop acting like it's yours, because it's not. Her words carved into me like a knife. My hands trembled, but I kept them folded on my lap. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I let the silence stretch until Carl shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Finally, I nodded once. I hear you, I said softly. Evelyn smirked, satisfied, and stood up. Good. We're going on a trip tomorrow. But when we get back, I expect this to be taken care of. Don't make me regret trusting you with this. Dad. Carl followed her out, throwing me one last smug look before shutting the door behind him. And just like that, I was alone in the house Margaret and I had built, surrounded by the echoes of their voices, greedy, demanding, ungrateful. But as I sat there in the silence, something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel like the weak old man they thought I was. No, I felt something else entirely. Resolve. They thought they had won. They thought I would roll over, open my wallet, and save them from their recklessness. But they didn't know me, not really, and they were about to learn that Harold Bennett was not a man to be ordered around. Asterisk. When the door clicked shut behind Evelyn and Carl, the silence of the house pressed against me like a weight. For a long while, I just sat in my chair, staring at the empty space where my daughter had stood. The words she had spoken replayed in my head like poison dripping slowly into water. You will pay Carl's debt. You were just holding Mom's money. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I saw Margaret again, her gentle smile, her warm hands resting over mine. The way she always reminded me that family meant love, not possession. If only she had seen the way Evelyn had looked at me tonight, as if I were nothing more than a wallet that hadn't been opened wide enough. I got up slowly, the creak in my knees reminding me of my age, and walked through the house. Every room told a story. The framed photographs on the walls, the worn cushions on the sofa where Evelyn once curled up as a child, the kitchen where Margaret had spent countless hours cooking meals that brought us all together. Memories clung to the walls like invisible threads, pulling at me as I moved from one room to the next. And yet, to Evelyn and Carl, all of this was just money. A house to be sold, assets to be stripped, a life's worth of work to be liquidated for their comfort. I felt anger rise in me, but beneath it, there was a steady determination. Margaret had trusted me with her legacy, and I would not let Evelyn, blinded by greed, tear it apart. That night, as I sat at the dining table, I opened the old wooden chest where Margaret and I had kept our most important documents, birth certificates, insurance policies, Margaret's will. Everything was neatly organized. I pulled out the deed to the house, the proof of ownership that had my name and Margaret's etched onto it. I ran my finger over the ink, and I made my decision. I wasn't going to let them take this house. No, I was going to take it from them first. The next morning, I called my old friend Daniel, a real estate agent I'd known for decades. He had been with Margaret and me when we bought the house all those years ago, and he knew the value not just of the property, but of the memories tied to it. Harold, he said warmly over the phone, It's been too long. How are you holding up? I hesitated, then answered, I've had better days. Daniel, listen, I need to sell the house. Quickly, there was silence on the line for a moment. Sell, Harold, this house is your life. Are you sure about this? I'm sure, I replied firmly. I can't stay here any longer. It's time to move on. Daniel didn't press me, though I could tell he wanted to. He simply said, all right, I'll start making calls. This market's hot, you might get an offer faster than you think. And faster than I thought was exactly right. By the end of the day, Daniel had the serious buyers lined up. By the following afternoon, I had accepted an offer. The paperwork was already being prepared. It all happened so quickly that I barely had time to breathe. And yet, every moment, I felt Margaret with me. I imagined her nodding in quiet approval as I signed the forms. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about downsizing. It was about sending a message. While Daniel handled the logistics, I turned my attention to something else. The box. I went into the attic, where I had kept old belongings packed away for years. Evelyn's childhood toys, Margaret's trinkets, even a few letters I had written but never sent. I pulled out a medium-sized wooden box, worn but sturdy. I polished it until it gleamed, then carried it downstairs to the dining table. Inside the box, I began placing items deliberately, each one chosen to carry a message Evelyn could not ignore. The first was a photograph of Evelyn at 8 years old, sitting on Margaret's lap, both of them smiling wide at the camera. The second was Margaret's wedding ring, which she had worn until the day she passed. The third was a letter I had written the night before. I sat down with a pen and let the words pour out of me. Evelyn, you once told me I was just holding your mother's money, as if my life and her legacy meant nothing more than numbers on paper. I have given you everything I could, and yet you demanded more, always more. When you ordered me to pay Carl's debt, you crossed a line you cannot uncross. This house was your mother's pride, and you thought to sell it like a used toy. You thought you could strip me of the only thing I have left of her. But you were wrong. I sold this house myself, not for you, not for Carl, but for me, for your mother, for the dignity you tried to take from me. By the time you read this, I will be gone. Don't look for me. Don't call me. My revenge is not in the money I withheld from you, but in the silence I leave behind. You will never know where I went, but you will know what you lost. Your mother's legacy was love, not greed. Remember that, if you can. I folded the letter and placed it carefully inside the box, then locked it with a small brass key. I placed the key in an envelope and taped it to the top of the box, ensuring Evelyn would have to open it herself. The final touch was the chart. I took a thick piece of poster board, grabbed a black marker, and wrote one word across it in bold letters. Sold. I leaned it against the front door, imagining Evelyn and Carl's faces when they saw it. By the time they returned from their trip, the sale would be complete. The house would no longer be theirs to dream of, and I would be gone. That night, I walked through each room one last time. I touched the walls, the furniture, the little pieces of Margaret's life that still lingered in every corner. And then, with a heavy but resolute heart, I packed a single suitcase. Clothes, some personal documents, and one framed picture of Margaret and me on our wedding day. That was all I needed. As I zipped the bag shut, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't running away. I was taking back control. And when Evelyn and Carl came home, they would finally understand what happens when you mistake love for weakness. The airport drop-off zone buzzed with impatient horns and rolling suitcases, but Evelyn barely noticed. She was laughing, a shallow, carefree laugh, as she adjusted her sunglasses and linked arms with Carl. That resort was exactly what we needed, she said. 5-star spa, endless wine, and no one nagging us about budgets or debt. Can you imagine Dad in a place like that? Carl smirked, shoving their luggage into the trunk of the Uber that had just pulled up. Your dad doesn't understand how to live. He hoards everything like a squirrel saving nuts for winter. If he had any sense, he would have just paid off the debt like you told him. $500,000 is nothing for him. Evelyn's lips tightened. It's not his. It was Mom's, and if Mom were alive, she'd have given it to us already. He's just clinging to it because he can't stand to see me independent. Carl gave a short laugh. Independent? Evelyn, baby, you're already independent. You told him what's what. Once we sell that house, we'll be debt-free and have a fresh start. Imagine the parties we could throw in our new place. Evelyn nodded, her eyes gleaming. Exactly. Dad needs to understand that this isn't his choice. It's ours. The ride back was quiet, filled with the hum of tires and the glow of phone screens. Evelyn scrolled through social media, already daydreaming about their future with her father's money. She imagined renovations, designer clothes, trips abroad, all funded by the wealth he selfishly refused to hand over. As the Uber pulled into their neighborhood, Evelyn sat up straighter, already rehearsing the words she'd use to pressure her father again. Maybe she'd guilt him about Mom's memory. Maybe she'd threaten to cut him off from her life altogether. Whatever it took, she'd get that money. But when the car turned onto their street, Evelyn froze. There, hanging boldly on the front door, was a large white chart with thick black letters scrawled across it: sold. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked, convinced she was imagining it. But as the car pulled to a stop in the driveway, the word didn't vanish. It loomed larger, clearer. Carl frowned, leaning forward. What the hell is that? Evelyn's pulse quickened as she shoved open the door. The air felt colder, sharper, as she hurried up the driveway. And then she saw it, sitting right on the welcome mat. At the foot of the door, with the sold sign above it, was a wooden box, old but polished, with a small brass lock and an envelope taped to the top. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. Carl came up behind her, his voice sharp. What's going on? Did your dad? He stopped, glancing at the sold sign again, and his face twisted with panic. Evelyn, did he sell the house? Evelyn's heart pounded in her ears. No, he wouldn't dare. But even as she said it, her stomach churned with doubt. She snatched the envelope from the top of the box and tore it open. Inside was a single brass key. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. Just a key. Her hands shook harder now as she slid it into the lock and lifted the lid of the box. Inside, she found 3 things. A photograph of herself as a child, sitting on her mother's lap, both of them smiling. Her mother's wedding ring, delicate and worn with age. A folded letter. Evelyn's throat tightened as she picked up the letter, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She unfolded it, her eyes darting across the page. Carl hovered at her shoulder, reading along silently. With every line, Evelyn's face paled. By the time she reached the end, her hands were trembling so violently that she nearly dropped the paper. She read it again, her lips moving silently over the words. Don't look for me. Don't call me. My revenge is not in the money I withheld from you, but in the silence I leave behind. Tears stung her eyes, but they weren't the tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage. She crumpled the letter in her fist and spun around, her eyes wild. He can't do this. He can't just leave. This is our house. Carl grabbed her by the shoulders. Evelyn, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, she screamed, her voice breaking. Do you realize what this means? He's gone, Carl. He took everything with him. He sold the house out from under us. We have nothing. Carl's face twisted with anger as he looked back at the sold sign. He played us. He knew exactly what we were planning. Evelyn's chest heaved. This isn't fair. This was supposed to be ours. He's just punishing me. Carl clenched his fists, his knuckles whitening. Well, then we'll find him. He can't just disappear. He's old. He won't get far. Evelyn wiped at her eyes, smearing her makeup. And when we find him, what then? He made it clear he doesn't want us in his life. He took Mom's legacy and twisted it into some kind of revenge. Carl shook his head. No, he's bluffing. He's hiding the money somewhere, and we're going to get it. I don't care if I have to hire a private investigator. We'll track him down. But Evelyn didn't answer. She stood frozen, staring at the box, the photograph, and the ring. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't expected. Shame. Her father had left her with symbols of love, a picture of happier times, her mother's ring, and words that cut deeper than any punishment, and yet Even as shame pricked at the edges of her heart, greed roared louder. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "We'll find him, Carl, and when we do, he'll regret leaving us with this." The box sat silently at their feet, carrying not just Harold's final message, but a truth Evelyn couldn't admit, not to Carl, not even to herself. She hadn't just lost her father, she had driven him away. The neighborhood was still. Too still. Evelyn's sobs echoed against the silent houses as if the world itself had turned its back on her. She gripped the crumpled letter in her trembling hand, unable to look at it again, yet unable to let it go. Carl paced the driveway like a caged animal, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked as though it might snap. The sold sign swayed in the faint evening breeze, taunting them both. Carl broke the silence first. "We need answers. Now. This doesn't make sense. He couldn't have just packed up and disappeared like that. There's paperwork, transfers, signatures. Someone had to be involved." Evelyn dragged her hands down her face, smearing her mascara into dark streaks. "I don't care about the paperwork. I care that he betrayed me. He left me standing here with this box like I'm some stranger, his own daughter." She slammed the box shut and shoved it against Carl's chest. "Take it. I don't want it. I want him back. I want the money. I want what's mine." Carl steadied the box against his hip, his expression hard. "You're thinking emotionally. Stop it. This isn't about feelings, it's about control. He's trying to humiliate you, Evelyn. But we won't let him win." Evelyn's laugh was hollow, manic. "Humiliate me. He destroyed me. Do you realize what people will say when they find out we're homeless? When they find out my father sold the house out from under me like I was nothing?" Carl grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Then we don't let them find out. We keep our heads high. We track him down. He has to be somewhere. He's not invincible. He left clues. This box, it's not a goodbye, it's a trail." But even as he spoke, Carl's certainty wavered. He could see it in Evelyn's eyes, the raw, desperate fear that maybe Harold had won, that maybe this wasn't just a bluff or a cruel game. Inside, Evelyn's mind spiraled back to the letter. She heard his words again and again, hammering at her pride. "My revenge is not in the money I withheld from you, but in the silence I leave behind." Those words gnawed at her like teeth in the dark. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay awake on the motel bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, Carl snoring beside her. The box sat on the knit stand, silent and accusing. She turned toward it, her chest tightening. She couldn't stop thinking about the photograph, her mother's soft smile, her tiny self nestled in her lap. Her mother had loved her. That much she knew. But her mother had also loved Harold. She remembered their quiet dinners, the way her mother touched Harold's hand when he was stressed, the way they shared looks filled with unspoken words, and Evelyn had hated it, even as a child. She'd hated how much her mother seemed to admire him, trust him, defer to him. Evelyn had wanted that attention. She wanted to be the one admired, the one trusted. But Harold had always been the rock, steady and patient. To patient. Now, staring at that picture, Evelyn realized something she had never dared admit. Her father had never stopped loving her either. He hadn't left because he hated her. He had left because she had pushed him too far. She squeezed her eyes shut. The thought was unbearable. The next morning, Carl was already on the phone, his voice sharp. "Yes. I need records for a property sale. Address is yes, that's right. I don't care how confidential it is. I'll pay whatever fee you want. Just get me the beer's details." Evelyn sat by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. Carl slammed the phone shut with a curse. "Nothing. They won't give me anything without Dad's consent. We're cut off, Evelyn. Legally, financially, everything." He covered his tracks. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He planned this. Every detail. He knew we'd go away. He knew we'd come back and—" She gestured helplessly toward the box. "And this is all we'd find." Carl dropped into the chair opposite her, his face shadowed. "So, what now? You want to just accept it? Let him disappear? Let him laugh at us from whatever hole he's hiding in?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. No, she couldn't accept it. She wouldn't. But even as she thought it, another image slipped into her mind. her father sitting quietly at the kitchen table, sipping tea, his eyes always kind but distant when she argued with him. He had warned her, hadn't he? He had told her, again and again, that greed would destroy her, and she had laughed at him, mocked him, ordered him. Now he was gone. Over the next few days, Evelyn and Carl spiraled deeper into obsession. They searched his old contacts, called distant relatives, even drove hours to check banks in neighboring towns. Every lead was a dead-end dot. It was as if Harold had vanished from the face of the earth. At night, Evelyn dreamed of him. Dreams where he sat across from her, silent, watching her with eyes that pierced straight through her. She would scream at him, demand he speak, demand he give her what she was owed. But in every dream, he would simply stand, turn, and walk away, always walking away. One evening, a storm raged outside the motel window. Evelyn sat at the small table, the box open before her. Carl was out chasing another dead lead, leaving her alone with the relics of her father's silence. She picked up her mother's ring, turning it slowly in her fingers. For the first time, the weight of it struck her not as jewelry, not as money, but as a symbol, a bond, a love she had scorned. Her chest tightened, and she whispered into the empty room, "Why, Dad? Why couldn't you just give me what I asked? Why did you have to leave?" Her voice broke. Why wasn't I enough? The storm howled in reply, drowning out the sound of her sobs. Days turned to weeks. Evelyn and Carl grew restless, bitter. They argued constantly, each blaming the other for their downfall. "You pushed too hard," Carl snapped one night. "If you hadn't demanded the money like it was yours." "Oh, don't you dare put this on me." Evelyn spat back. "You were the one whispering in my ear, telling me to sell the house, telling me to push him." Carl's eyes narrowed. "At least I had a plan. All you had was entitlement. And now look where we are." Evelyn's face twisted with fury. "Don't you dare talk to me like that. You're nothing without me. You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for me." The room went silent, thick with venom. In that silence, Evelyn heard something again, her father's words, echoing in her mind. "My revenge is not in the money I withheld from you, but in the silence I leave behind." She shuddered. The final blow came one morning when Carl stormed in, slamming the door behind him. "It's over. I'm done. I can't keep chasing a ghost. Your dad's gone, Evelyn. Face it." She stared at him, her lips parting, but no words came out. He grabbed his bag, his eyes cold. "You wanted me to marry you for money, not love. Well, the money's gone, and so am I." The door slammed, leaving her alone. The box sat on the bed, open, the photograph and the ring staring up at her. Evelyn sank onto the mattress, clutching the picture to her chest. For the first time, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." But the silence answered back. Meanwhile, Harold sat on a quiet porch hundreds of miles away, the sun setting over a field of golden wheat. He rocked slowly in his chair, a book in his lap, his eyes calm. He wasn't smiling, but his expression carried peace. He had left behind the noise, the greed, the endless demands. He had left behind the daughter who could never see beyond herself, and in leaving, he had found freedom. His revenge was complete, not through anger, not through wealth, but through absence, through silence. And in that silence, Harold finally lived.